It's okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're good. Okay, so why I started homeschooling my kids. I want to share my story, and I decided that the best way to show it is through pictures. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to be sharing a lot of pictures from my family and just our experiences and our journey. So when I started homeschooling, when I was actually, my husband and I, we were actually anti-homeschool. We did not agree with it when we first got married and started having kids. And then our oldest son got to first grade, and our second son got to kindergarten, and we started having experiences where it was really hard. So our oldest child, he is a reader. He loves to read. He is a very advanced reader, and he was wanting to read books that he wasn't allowed to read from parts of the library that were not of his level. And he was becoming really frustrated. There were books that he wanted to read and they wouldn't let him. And then my other son, he is a very active child. And when he got to kindergarten, he was struggling emotionally, whereas before he went to school, he was the most even-keeled, chill, easygoing kid. And then after a few weeks of kindergarten, he would come home and just have these meltdowns. And I started like exploring why is my child so different? And I learned that their playground was really tiny, had a fence around it, one little tiny play structure. He wasn't allowed to run in the yard and like move his body very much. And he was inside, stuck in a desk, and it really affected him emotionally. And so those were some of my red flags, I guess, some things that concerned me. And then I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so next screen, or next slide. Family time. That was another thing that we struggled with, is we didn't have a lot of family time. The schools required so much time between homework and all the meetings and just everything. We lost a lot of family time. And then also life skills and responsibility. I felt like my kids had to go to bed super early to get up really early for the bus and then come home and have homework, and just they didn't have time to do their chores. We had a lot of chores and responsibilities for them in the home that were not getting done. And so these are just some pictures of what life has been like since pulling them out and coming back home. They have time to do work and to learn responsibility and life skills in the home, and then also family time. And then next is flexibility, and then traveling and world school. So our family loves to travel, and I believe that the world, traveling to the places, is like the best textbook. It's the best way to learn about the world, is going to these places and traveling. And then flexibility. I put a picture of my son reading at night, because when we were in public school, we didn't have time for that. Like, I was so strict on my bedtime. The kids had to be in bed early to be able to get up early, because I hated the fight in the morning when kids are tired. And so they didn't have time to read at night. And my kids, I love now that my kids will sometimes read like into the night. They'll read like till like 11 at night. I go in there and I find them both, my two older boys, in their beds, sometimes even together with their little lights that they bought with their own money, and they just love to read. And I love the next morning, my boys always will tell me like, I finished the book last night. That's like the best feeling in the world. And so we have so much more flexibility in our schedule. Okay, so this is the key. This is what started us thinking about homeschooling, and that is full day kindergarten was a big topic where we lived. And we went to a board meeting because we were against it, and we just didn't feel like it was the best for our child. And it didn't matter what our opinions were, what we said, we voiced. In the end, they decided to move forward with it, and we realized we have no power over our children. We have no power over children's education. And we felt so powerless. And so I hated that feeling. So that led us to research. And some of the things when we were exploring this option of full day kindergarten, some of the things that we learned, I was also in the process of starting a play school. So like a home-based preschool in my home. And we called it play school because we wanted it to look a lot like Finland's learning system. I don't know how much you're familiar with Finland's learning system, but in Finland, they do not start preschool until like age 8. And even then, like, it's like half day preschool, and then kindergarten's half day. They don't have homework. They're just very play-based, interest-led, child-led. And then those first 8 years, they focus on emotional and social development. And I think that is genius. In my experience, that is what, when your children are emotionally nurtured, it's going to lead them to prepare them for the academics. And I think in our country, we have it backwards. We push the academics so soon, so early. We're so proud of our kids that are reading at age 3 when we're stealing their childhood. Like, they need to play, they need to be outside. Those are the things that they need to be doing to nurture emotions that drive the learning process as they get older. So the first year was an experiment for us because, like I said, we were anti-homeschool before, and all of a sudden we were jumping into this thing we knew nothing about. So we experimented, and if you want to skip over to my homeschool struggles, this is my first year. I got pregnant. I was really struggling with depression. I had fallen into depression from pregnancy. We were living with family. There was a lot of stress. And then throw in, 4 kids, and they were home all day, and I lost all sense of my identity. My self-care routines out the window. I had no time for myself anymore, which I'm sure you guys all understand. And then the kids' resistance to learning and the mindset shift. So it requires a huge mindset of learning at school, going to a facility, going to an institution to learn, and then you're home to play, relax, sleep. And now all of a sudden you're home to learn. Like, your work is now at home. And for a child, that's really hard. Learning how to learn at home is such a mindset shift. And so I put this little this little cartoon here. I think it's really genius. So in the beginning, in the first square, it says, "It's the first day back. Where's Pete? He's being homeschooled this year." And so these kids, these fish are asking where he is. And then it shows him in like this little tank. Like, that's what it felt like in the beginning. Like, we were pulling our kids out of the system and they were stuck at home. And that we felt trapped. But then if you notice in the second one, what's actually happening is all these fish are actually the ones in the tank. And then our children at home are in the ocean. They're in the real world. Their learning experiences are so much more natural and enriching than what they can get at school, because the school's education is very limited. Okay, so next, nurturing love of learning. So that first year, in my naivety, I started out just with a public school at home mentality, but it didn't work. My kids resisted, they fought, they wanted to just play. And I tried to get them to do their schoolwork and they wouldn't. And I threatened almost every day to send them back to public school just to get them to sit down and listen, because they didn't want to go to school. So I used that threat. I remember like pretending to call the school to set up appointments just to get them to do something horrible. But then I realized really soon that I was doing it all wrong. And so that whole first year, we threw out all the curriculum and we just focused on the love of learning and nurturing the love of learning. So we learned through play, through games. We learned through stories. I love this picture of my son reading to his newborn baby brother. But he's 2 now, so he's not a baby anymore. But and then the next slide shows more learning through nature, learning through cooking. These are just natural ways of learning because life is learning. We learn through life, and when we learn that way, it sticks with us more. We're emotionally involved. It's not just being fed information that we have to memorize for a test and then we forget it. We're learning. It's true learning. It's becoming a part of us and it's growing us. So the next one says, before school existed, it was just called learning. And I love that, because if you think about it, think about the history of school, like there wasn't always schools, like physical buildings where we go to school. Before, it was just learning. Life was learning. And education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. In my experience, my children, when they started school, so if you think about it, let me back up. Babies have curiosity. They are naturally curious. They put everything in their mouths. They want to know everything about the world around them. They're staring into your eyes and they're learning about you as they're just like watching you, right? You can see that in a baby's eyes. And then they're a toddler and they're pulling everything out, making messes, emptying out the cupboards, pushing all the buttons, exploring their world. They are naturally curious. But then we put them in school and now they're learning that they have to learn from a teacher, from a book, from a textbook externally, instead of learning that they are capable of learning from the inside out. But we teach them it's outside in, externally taught. And so that's where I have shifted my understanding of learning, and I seek to empower my children to learn from the inside out. So I'm not their teacher. I am their coach. I'm their mentor. I'm their guide. And they have the reins of their education. They are free to learn whatever their heart wants to learn. But I have firm fences. So I love the phrase free range learning with firm fences. So I like to think of it like, instead of we're having spaghetti for dinner and you have to eat spaghetti today, that's what everybody's having. I like to think of it as like, I have a buffet and you are free to choose what you want to eat from everything that's available. And so I have a lot of options and we learn together as a family, and we, I love the free range learning. But yes, those firm fences, I do have boundaries. We have structure in our home that help our day be organized and help our children have structure in their lives. And, you know, they're not just like wild, free, do whatever you want kind of thing. We did dip into unschooling a little bit. And I feel like a lot of unschooling families don't really unschool, but unparent, if that makes sense. Not to judge them. For me, it was a little too loose, too wild. So that's where the firm fence is. I feel like I need structure in my home. I need structure in our day and our routine. But as far as learning, I want my children to be free to learn what they want, because I feel like when they have that freedom, they will go further and deeper than any curriculum, anything that I give them, because it's coming from an internal interest and motivation. But you have to nurture that. And so that's where emotions come in. So through coaching, I didn't really get into this, but back when I was my first year, when I was struggling so much with depression and my loss of self-care and feeling like I was drowning, I was given a lifeline. A lifeguard was my life coach. And she taught me so much about emotions and how emotions drive actions, and also how my thoughts create my emotions. And so I learned how to be empowered from my thoughts and shift my thoughts and my mindset to create the emotions that will drive the actions that I want, and our actions create our results. So I'll get into that in a second, but first I want to focus on this little part of emotions driving actions. Every action of ours, every action of our children's is driven by an emotion. So if it's an inaction, if they're not doing something, it's because of the lack of an emotion. And so if we, before I learned all this, I was so focused on the actions and forcing the actions and trying to manipulate the actions to get them to do what I want them to do. But now I focus on the emotions and nurturing certain emotions that I know will drive their actions naturally, but it will be them doing it. And so it's so much more powerful when we're empowering them. It's kind of like, instead of giving them fish, but teaching them to fish, kind of idea. So the next slide shows emotions of learning. So these are just a few of the emotions that I have learned through my experience that I focus on. I mentioned a little bit about curiosity. Curiosity is a huge one. Nurturing curiosity, encouraging questions. A lot of times we want our kids just to listen and don't ask questions, like questions is like a bad thing. No, I want my kids to be inquisitive and to ask questions, and there's no wrong question. There's no stupid question. The more questions they ask, that's what leads them to learn. And then courage. We have learned a lot about failure and the courage to fail, because failure is a good thing. Our world thinks it's negative, right? It tells us we're a bad person or we made a mistake or whatever, and it reflects negatively on us. But no, failure means that you tried and that you were willing to be vulnerable. And if you can try again after failing, that's such a good thing. Like, it shows your resilience. And the more we fail, the closer we are to success. And so I encourage my children to fail. Even myself, I look for opportunities that I might fail, because that's going to push me towards growth and push me to increase my comfort zone. I love to share this example. Like, if this is my comfort zone and I do something really hard, like that's way out here in this zone, and then I do that, then my comfort zone goes from here to here. And now everything else that was in between this and this is now so much easier, because I have so much more confidence and I've overcome all of that. failure. So courage, and then confidence, like I just mentioned, confidence is such a powerful emotion. Confidence drives our best actions. So all of this can be applied to our children to empower them to be learners, but also us mothers and fathers, parents, to drive, to nurture our own emotions, to help us build our own confidence, to help empower us as well. And then creativity and connection. I think creativity kind of explains itself. Creating is what leads us to contributing in the world. And so as my children are learning what drives them, what motivates them, what their interests are, what their passions are, like this is their time to explore that. Whereas I feel like, I don't know, when I'm a product of public school, I did not learn that. I did not understand who I wanted to become until after I graduated school and then went to college. And then when I went to college, it was like, I loved learning because I was learning what I want to learn in my own specialty of interest. Whereas I feel like if we can do that so much earlier and give our kids the opportunity younger, instead of just having them go through this box learning of like what everybody needs to learn, but give them the opportunities to really explore who they are and what they enjoy doing, and to follow that. That will lead them to be able to contribute in the world and fulfill their mission in life. And that's going to be different for every child. So that's why every child's education should be customized to them. And then connection. When our children feel connected, especially with that like mother-child relationship or father-child relationship, when there's connection, or even with siblings in a family, or even friends, like if you have a co-op, like that connection leads to a rich experience of learning that they will enjoy. And then so nurturing learning emotions drives actions that lead to true learning. So this leads us to kind of what I teach as a life coach. We came up with the Heart School, and this heart learning model kind of describes a lot of what I just shared, and it's all about learning from the heart. So we start with our thoughts. When we have higher thoughts, it leads to or generates emotions that create or drive actions that create our results, and that leads to true learning. And so it's about empowering our children to create the results that they want in their life. So all of their actions, all of their results, it's all coming from their own thoughts and emotions versus their external circumstances. And I think in society, or just as it's our human brain, we all have human brains. And so we all are guilty of blaming our external circumstances for our emotions, or people for our emotions. Somebody hurt me, somebody, whatever. But when we can take ownership over our emotions, it's so empowering, because then we can create the emotions that we want to, that will drive the actions that we want to take, and then create the results that we want in our lives. All right. And I haven't been timing myself, so I'm not sure how long I've been talking. I don't want to talk too long. So yeah, then the next slide just shows about my business. Oh, and then I didn't really mention so much about my child, my oldest son. So my oldest son, this is Tanner. Couple slides, there we go. He's a highly emotional, highly sensitive child. So that just means he feels emotions very intensely. And earlier in our journey, before I found life coaching, I was struggling with him because he felt whenever he would get in trouble or be asked to do something he didn't want to do and just resisted a negative emotion, he would feel shame and feel his emotions so intensely that he just wanted to die. He wanted to escape. He would run away. We just like couldn't control his emotions, and he couldn't control his emotions. It was so frustrating. Anyway, so coaching, after I learned to empower myself mentally and emotionally, and I was in a better place. Then I was thinking, how can I help my child? How can I use these tools to empower him to be able to manage his own emotions and manage his own mind, his own thoughts? And so I took a lot of the tools that I learned from my life coach and kind of like twisted them and taught him in very fun analogies, fun, simple ways that a child could understand. And then this was like 4 years ago. So then when I became a life coach, so I went through the process to become certified because my experience was so powerful. And I felt like I had tools that everybody needs, especially if you homeschool, but not even that. Like, you don't even need to homeschool to have to learn how to empower yourself. These tools can empower you in any way of in your life. So this is Kid to Kid coaching. My son partners with me. We've worked together to create a mini series of videos that teaches emotional resilience tools for children. And they're the same tools that I taught him, and he teaches them in these videos in really fun, cute ways. His personality, he's on fire. I'm just so proud of him. And he has really, you learn through teaching. And so it's been really fun to watch him grow as he has overcome his fears and created these videos, and also coaching other kids. He doesn't coach necessarily, he more offers support and teaches and helps other kids from a peer-to-peer level. I feel like kids are so much more receptive when they can see that another kid is struggling with the same thing and understands and gets you, because sometimes they can feel lonely, especially emotionally, because they're not used to talking about their emotions. They're not used to feeling their emotions. And so he helps them learn that it's okay to feel what you're feeling, and really just kind of eliminate that layer of shame around negative emotions as they learn to process emotions. Because I don't think our society really focuses on processing emotions and feeling emotions. We chase positivity. We think it's better to be happy, which, yeah, we all want to be happy. But when we allow ourselves to feel the negative emotions, it's actually not as negative as when we resist those emotions. And so that's just one of the things that has been really powerful for him. And so, yeah, he helps me in that area. So this is just some information if you're interested, my email and Facebook and Instagram. And that's all I have.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. We are at 8:33, and I believe that we got so much information. I was actually frantically taking notes. Well, welcome again to all those who just joined us. This was just an intro to empowering your kids to become the learners that we want them to be. So, of course, like I said, I was taking notes. We are going to be heading to the breakout rooms. Deborah will put us in breakout rooms for about 10 minutes, and where we get to discuss some of what we learned. And I think Laura had some questions for us. Well, in the breakout rooms, introduce yourselves, where you're coming from, your number of kids, and if possible, no pressure, turn on your cameras, because we want to just create that camaraderie amongst us parents. And we have a few questions. Choose the questions that speak to you. Be mindful of time so everyone can get to speak if they want to. And just raise your hand if you have any issues. If anything goes on in the breakout room and you want to leave, you can leave the breakout room and come back to the main session. And yeah, so we have some prompts for our breakout room from Laura. What are your current struggles or fears with homeschooling? How do your thoughts about homeschool influence the outcome of your homeschool day? How are you taking care of your own needs as a homeschool parent? And do you have a self-care plan? And lastly, how are you empowering your children emotionally and academically? So again, you can choose whatever question really speaks to you and talk about it, or talk about all three. Let's just make sure we give everyone time to go through. We come back for Q&A. So if you have any pressing question you want to ask Laura, very personal question to your situation, be sure to bring that back when we come back from Q&A. So Deborah, are we ready?
Yes, so sorry, I had to change some rooms around, just got some messages. All right, folks, the questions are in the chat again, so you'll be able to keep those when you go in your breakout rooms, and have fun, enjoy.
Thank you.
Hi, CG Go. I think you said you're not able to join a breakout room, is that right? Yeah, I think there were some technical challenges when we went to breakouts.
Yes, that was one. And I think for one of them, I think her computer died. So I'm
Oh,
wondering if she wasn't able to find the link to get back in. I'm hopeful that that wasn't the problem, but they'll get the recording. But this is awesome because then we get to ask our questions and you know, so I had CG and Lacey in my room, and um, how was your room, Sheena?
It was great. I had Laura. What an honor. That's pretty cool. Yeah,
that's fun.
I told her what she told me definitely needed to hear today. So thank you.
That's
I'm so glad.
awesome. That's amazing. So, is there anything anyone wants to share from their room before we get before I share what I got from my room? And I have some questions for you, Laura. Is there
Yeah.
anything? So,
Um, I'll share if Sheena doesn't want to. Do you want to share or do you want me to share? Okay, I'm good. Me? Okay. So we just, one of the, if you don't mind, Sheena, I'd love to address some of the fears because it's a very common fear that I hear a lot. And that is, how do I know I'm doing enough? How do I know what to follow? How do I know like the system or standards or the scale? Who owns that scale? Who like
all right.
just right? And I love that question. And I told her, do you know who owns that scale? You own that scale. Your child owns that scale. The school system doesn't own that scale. The school system, the curriculum, the standards, all of that, levels, grades, it's all for the school system to get funding from the government. That's how they measure all the testing. It's all to be measured so that they can get funding. Really, that's all it's for. Homeschool, we don't need to worry about any of that. Our kids are never behind. There's no such thing as behind. And when we like let go of that, like what emotion do you feel? Do you feel more confident? Do you feel more free and more relaxed in your schooling? And when you are operating from those emotions, it's gonna drive the actions that are gonna create so much better results for your family in the learning process than if you're so worried about like, measuring up or falling behind and all of that. So those were such great questions.
That's amazing. Oh gosh. I could go so much into that, but I'm not because I do want you to address these two questions, a couple questions that I got. So the first question was from CG, and she wanted to know, and I love our room because our room showed us exactly why we should be homeschooling our children and why homeschooling is really the way of education in the future. Because we had one whose child was, you really had having possible social anxiety, so not really emotional. And then we had another extent, we had the other one was on the other extent, very emotional. So we had questions from both ends, want to address that. What were the tools? CG wanted to know, what tools did you use to help Tanner when you talked about these emotional tools? And I'll give a little bit of background. So as an only child without any co-op attendance, they have just one co-op in the area that they really cannot attend. Is it possible to be supported socially? And if so, how, especially in an environment where they don't talk about co-ops? Sorry, in an environment where they don't talk about emotions. So some families, like we know, don't really address emotions, don't talk about emotions. So how do you support that only child, so they are not socially awkward? Yeah.
You want me to answer that?
Yeah.
That address me? Okay. That was a lot, so I'm not sure which one. I'm gonna start with like the supported socially, worrying about what other people are. It was about like what other people are thinking and how they're not able to support us.
No, basically, is it possible to homeschool an only child
Oh,
who doesn't attend co-ops so that they do not become socially awkward in the future? And what are the tools to use to do that?
yes. Okay. So in that situation, I would definitely get involved in co-ops and have lots of play dates. I don't know if you're part of a church or extended family. Just look for ways to be social in outside of school. Like school isn't the only way to be social. There's so many ways, but we think because we're taught social by our society that you go to school to be socialized. And when it's interesting is I actually feel like my kids' social life at school was more negative than now, because bullying and worrying about comparing and who likes who and, you know, cliques and just all that social drama. Whereas at home in our co-ops, like I have a 5-year-old that plays with like 12-year-olds and 13, like teenage girls. She just loves and adores, and they're such great role models because there's no like grades where you're like stuck in a group with like kids your own age. You get to play with anybody, and it's just a richer social experience. So just seek that in other organizations, whether it's like Parks and Rec, sports, church, all these other things outside of your home. If you don't have siblings, that's totally doable.
Yeah, I think the concern with that was they are not able to, they have one co-op and that one they are not able to attend. So I do love your recommendation, Parks and Rec. And also I will drop right here in the chat because I did not tell Deborah to prepare for this one. So we do have a link where we have put about 5,000 co-ops. We are not sure that all of those, it's free. You can search through that. We are not sure if all those co-ops are still very active, but any contact info we found for those co-ops, and we're working on updating as we go. Any contact info we found, we put on there. So we have about 5,000 co-ops all over the US on there. And
can I just add one more thing to that is
yeah.
You can start your own co-op. That's actually something I'm doing right now, because we had a huge co-op and then COVID happened and it dissolved, and they all got involved in other things. And so this year, my kids and I were like, okay, we're gonna do our own, let's start our own. And so we put it out there in Facebook groups and said, we're starting our own. It's our home. And it's, yeah, just take matters into your own hands.
Yeah, I really love that, especially because people, parents, families have different values. So you want to connect with those who have shared the same values, so that, you know, there is not a lot of conflict. Of course, you want your child to be exposed to the world, but when it comes to socialization, especially for one who is a little bit socially awkward to start with, you want to find one where you have shared interests, right? So if your kid loves to play games, and this co-op is about games, that you start a co-op about maybe gamer kids, of 13-year-old gamer kids, and you go from there. So I love that. Deborah, you have anything to add before we go to Lacey's question? Okay, so Lacey's question was, how do you, Lacey, what do you want to ask your question? The reason I asked CJ's question was she gave me permission to ask a question. She wasn't in a place where she could. So I'll let Lacey go.
Oh, okay. I have a 12-year-old daughter who is pretty highly emotional, and that is not that I'm not emotional. I just have always dealt with it like in kind of like a very logical way, and so I try to like attack her emotions with like logic, and it almost feels like because you were saying what thoughts do you have while you're dealing with your struggle, and it almost seems like the thought that I have when she is in like a highly emotional state is that I don't want to bring attention to it because I'm afraid it'll grow. Like I kind of almost feel like we need to just separate and like take a break, and that seems to work for me but not for her. But I don't know how to break out of the cycle, and like whatever I try to do doesn't seem to be. I'm just experimenting over here, and I feel like I'm just not being successful. So I guess it would. Go ahead. Did that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally makes sense. Okay. I've been there. I know. So the first thing is you need to be able to separate yourself from child when they're in their emotional meltdown, and be emotionally independent yourself. So a lot of times what happens is when people want to fix their child so that they can feel better themselves, that's where we have to fix, is where we have to get to a point ourselves where we don't need our child to be different in order for us to feel an emotion, whether it's feel like a better mom, whether it feels like more confident, whether it's just peace, whatever that emotion is that we're seeking How are you going to feel when your child is acting the way you want them to act? You can feel that right now. You don't have to wait for them to change. And so when we own our emotions, we're modeling for them that our emotions are not driven by external circumstances. So such as our child who's having this panic attack or whatever it is, they're not creating our emotions. They're not driving our emotions. Our emotions are coming from our thoughts. And so you have the power to keep yourself emotionally regulated because you have the power over your own thoughts and your own mind. And so that's a lot of the work that we do in coaching, where we like work on those thoughts and rewire our brains to look at our child's situation differently, where we don't need them to change. And we can love and accept them exactly where they are. And then when we're coming from that energy, that true unconditional love, where we don't need them to change, then you're going to be so much more powerful in helping support them. And then if I can shift to that, because that's the first work, is here. Once you get there, then you can help your child and empower them by learning the same tools that you just learned, is to show them that their emotions are coming from their thoughts. And so one of the tools is that our mind is has a door, and the door has a doorknob on the inside, not the outside. And so when I teach my child that, it helps him remember that nobody else has any access to his mind, to his emotions. That's all in his control. And so he can open and close that door when he wants to, and he has that power. And so that's just one example. I have a ton of other examples. That's just one example of things that I've taught my child to help him regulate his emotions. And then earlier I talked a lot about allowing emotions. I would like to, if there's time, I'd like to speak on that too. So my child struggles with hitting. When he feels angry, he hits. We had a really powerful coaching session with my child after he hit his brother, and he ran to his room feeling shame. And I helped him feel his emotion and helped him locate it in his body and describe it. Tell me, what does it look like? Name it. It was anger. It was red. It was in his hands. It was heavy. And I realized, like, wow, no wonder you're hitting. You're feeling hot, red anger in your hands, and it's heavy. So you want to hit. It made so much sense. So then I coached him on feeling the anger instead of resisting the anger. Because when he resisted the anger, he felt shame. And that's what led to the actions of hitting. And I told him, as soon as you allow yourself to feel the anger and don't feel any shame about it, that will shift so much for him. And there's so much more with that I'd love to share, but due to time, I better not.
That was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would, if everybody is okay, we would love for you to share some more for 5 extra minutes, or we could just share your contact info and have them, follow
Okay,
up with you.
I will continue that story. There's more to that story that I'd love to share on another experience, because this is an ongoing thing with him. Another little coaching session, I just call them like mother mentor meetings, where we're sitting in his room after something happened and, the emotions. And again, like, if I hadn't done the work on myself first, I couldn't do this effectively. So, that's like the key. Then I asked him some questions. I said, do you love yourself? And he looked at me like, yes, I love myself. And I said, do you really love yourself? And he's like, yeah, I do. And I said, do you love the hitting part of yourself? Do you love that you hit? And he looked at me and was like, well, of course not. Why would I love that part of me? And so that is where I got to really teach him the power of loving himself, not just the good, but also the bad, the negative. We need to learn how to embrace all of us. That's true confidence. When we love and embrace the negative and the positive of ourselves, when we truly love ourselves, we are so much more powerful in our actions. And I told him, as soon as you love and accept and embrace that part of you that you struggle with, all of your struggles, you're going to stop needing to hit. The actions will change. You won't need to hit your brother because you will love and respect yourself so much that you won't need to hit him, because you will respect yourself and you'll respect him. It kind of bleeds over. And so we nurture that love of self, because there's so much shame in there. And that's the shame and resistance, all of that is what's creating those actions, what's driving those actions. And so that's just a little bit more of a deeper layer of what I've done with him. And you have to do that on yourself too. Like learning to have that, I think that is one of the things, like we need to learn how to love and accept ourselves, not just the great things about ourselves, but also embracing our struggles and our weaknesses and recognizing that we're all 50% amazing and 50% hot mess, right? We all are. And when we can do that for ourselves and have that compassion and confidence, then it's so much easier to do that for other people, and our relationships are struggles are stronger because we offer that same compassion and understanding to others as well.
Wow, this is just amazing, Laura. I wish we could sit here all night. Like I said, when I first met you, I think it was a little bit after I met you, I said, we need to put you on a stage. Like parents all over need to hear what you have. And what's been amazing is every time I met with you, I learned something different. I learned so much more tonight. So yeah, I want to really thank you. Thank you so much for this. I will quickly go through, since we are 3 minutes over. Hopefully we can get through this in 2 minutes. I will share my screen with our next steps. So thank you for all your patience with us. Our next steps, hang on. So we have a quick feedback survey that you will receive. And we have a free Homie planner that if you haven't received, it's on our website. And we're actually building a lot of resources for parents as well because of the feedback that we've gotten. So if there's anything that you think that we can do to make homeschooling easier for you and for your children, do let us know. And I think that is it. We just have one more really special announcement. So for those of you who came tonight, we have Laura is actually sharing a video series, right? Laura, what's the gift?
So I mentioned earlier that my son Tanner and I created the mini series of emotional resilience for children, and it's him teaching the tools that I have taught him. And that is the video, the video gift that I would love to share.
Yeah, and that's awesome. So we will send that over to you. You complete your feedback survey, and we'll also send a replay when we have that available. We should be in about the next couple of days. And Laura is one of our very special homeschool experts that we have on a new platform that we just built. It is homie.coach, and you are the very first to hear of this. You go on there, you can find homeschool consultants, homeschool experts who can help guide you through homeschooling. And it's not a commitment. You can book one session, but I will advise you, because I've had to have coaches my life as well. I would say a transformation really comes when someone holds your hand through a season. Like Laura said, when she first started homeschooling and was pregnant and just going crazy, she had to get a life coach. So, but no pressure, just go on there and look through. If you don't find someone that works for you, we also have where you can request help, where you actually state what is going on. You build your profile and you state what's going on. And one of the coaches can reach out and say, hey, I can work out a homeschooling plan for you. I can work with you on so-and-so terms. So post your request for help or reach out to one of the consultants. It's very easy to do. We use Stripe, which is a global payment system like PayPal. So it processes your payment. The payment goes over to the consultant when your session is over. So we'd love for you to try it and give us some feedback. info@homie.so is how you can reach us. We want to hear from you. We are in touch with a lot of homeschool experts, and we want to be able to give you the value that you need. So reach out and let us know how you did. Sheena has her hand raised. Yes, Sheena.
I'm sorry, guys. I think I did that on accident. Forgive me.
Oh, okay, that's okay. So yeah. So Deborah, do you have anything else? I think I covered all the bases.
Yes, Quinta, thank you. Thank you so much, Laura. And thank you, Sheena, Lacey, and
Thank you.
Gigi for joining us. This was spectacular. I loved all the kind words in the chat, especially since I didn't get to join, didn't have the privilege of joining the breakout rooms. And Laura, seriously, your words of wisdom are, like Sheena said, they're what I needed to hear. So even if I'm not homeschooling right now, it's still what I
Yeah.
need to hear. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Yeah, Deborah, were we gonna share about what we're building to bring the accountability groups, support groups?
Sure, if we would like to share about that. So you'll notice in the survey that one of the questions asks if you would like to meet other homeschool parents. If you say yes, then we will, and you give us your email, if you would be so kind, we will reach out to you about different ways to meet with other homeschool parents. Quinta and I have been thinking about creating homeschool support groups with small groups of homeschool parents coming together to support each other through this journey, because it's a tough one. And sometimes all you really need is someone just to tell you you're doing okay. So we hope that y'all can provide that for each other. So please, if you're interested, go ahead and check the yes. If you're not, or it's not for you right now, we won't take it personally. So yes, fill out that survey. Thank you, Sheena. Or just email us directly in case the survey gets a bit cumbersome, because I know
Right.
I think some of you are kind of running around and on your phones and all these things, which we understand because yeah, you're homeschooling parents, you're busy.
Yeah, and these groups are free. They are not your Facebook group with 1,000 or 500 individuals. It's free, and it's going to be small groups of about 5 to 6, just like we had tonight. We come from a program where we did something like this, and these small groups is where you really get to build community, smaller than even a co-op. So we thought that we got so much value from it. So we thought we could do the same for homeschool parents, just small groups, free, but you get to be consistent, because that's how you build value and trust, and start being vulnerable when you consistently meet with the same people week after week. So it's not going in between different groups. It's the same group of people once you get placed with them, unless you're not comfortable, then you could ask to be moved, but we keep you with the same people, and you get to build community that way. We also saw it as an answer to pen pals, because parents want pen pals or friends for their kids, but they're posting their pictures on Facebook, and there's just so much going on with that. And we thought, let the parents meet. Then if they think they've got something going, then they can introduce their children to the other parents' children. So thank you all. We are so sorry we went over. We're trying to wing this with you all. I'm a homeschool parent myself, so I really understand about your time. You don't have too much of that to give. Thank you so much, Laura. Really appreciate you. And on our website, we'll have the replay in a couple of weeks. We'll send it to your email also with how you can contact Laura directly. Thank you all, and have a good night.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.